today's packing class, we're going to start with an explanation of the parts of the parachute. We're using a 9-cell parachute because that's what all of our student canopies are, and that's what you're going to be learning on. And each parachute has a nose, which is the front of the parachute where the air goes in, and a tail, which is the back of the parachute, which is closed. Each parachute has 4 line groups, A, B, C, and D, and they run the entire width of the parachute and are attached to each cell throughout the parachute. There are 2 sets of line groups that are attached to the outer edge of the parachute, and those are the stabilizer lines, which are on the ends, and the steering lines, which are on the back corners of your tail. On most 9-cell parachutes, on most all of our student parachutes, the center cell is black and the end cells are black, so that should help you to identify where you are and what you're looking at when you're packing this parachute. If you're ready to start packing, you're going to stretch your parachute out, lay your container down, hook it to something, or put a weight on it so that it stays in place while you're packing, and now you're ready to set the brakes. I'm going to start by picking up the toggle off the velcro, pulling the steering line all the way down until this loop is pulled through the guide ring. That's extremely important that the loop is all the way through the guide ring. You'll take your toggle and put the end of it through the loop so that it is going the same direction of this piece of Velcro that stows the excess steering line for you. You'll turn the toggle, put the top of the toggle into the elastic toggle keeper to hold it in place. Take the excess steering line and neatly fold it on top of the Velcro keeper, and make sure you put it on top of just the keeper and not on top of the hook that is attached to the actual riser, because that will fray your steering line. Once you have your steering line folded up, you'll tightly fold the keeper over top of the lines and then lay your toggle back down in place. One more time on this side. Pick up your toggle, pull the steering line down so that the loop goes through the guide ring. Put the toggle through the loop, going the same direction as the Velcro line keeper. Turn your toggle, put the top of the toggle into the elastic keeper at the top. Stow your lines on top of the pile keeper. Fold it over nice and tight so your lines stay in place, and lay the toggle down. Now we're ready to walk the lines up. Start by walking the lines up. You have to pick them up. The steering line goes on top of your index finger, and then pick up the rear risers that your toggles are attached to and your front risers, and keep them separated, as you can see. And you're going to just stand up, get between the lines, and walk towards the canopy. When you get up here, you want to shake it out just to try to let the material straighten out. You're going to step to one side. You're going to put the line groups all in one hand. Still keep the group separated. So your steering lines are still on top, rear risers are on one finger, and your front risers are on the lowest finger. Now it's very important at this point that you check to make sure that your line groups are straight all the way down to your risers. It's really the only way that you can tell if you've got a flip through on your parachute. So you're going to take one hand, take a hold of the front risers, the lowest ones, drop them down, look all the way back to your risers and see that they're not twisted around anything. If that's clear, you're going to add your rear risers to it, keeping just your steering lines in your hand. Lift those up, make sure that they're clear all the way down to your toggles. And if there's no twists from the parachute all the way down to the risers, then it should be a straight parachute. You're ready to put this over your shoulder. You're going to milk any slack that there is towards you and let it fall down into the parachute. Now we need to talk about the slider. I've got the slider right here over my shoulder. And all of the student parachutes, the slider is a non-collapsible type, meaning that it always stays the same shape. When you're ready to pack your parachute, your slider should be big and rectangle. And that is true on every parachute. When you are packing something or you're jumping something that is not a student rig, some of the sliders collapse. You pull a string while the parachute is open and you are flying it down to the ground, and it collapses the slider because it serves no purpose anymore. It is essential that you open that slider back up and it is a full big rectangle again before you pack the parachute. It serves as a staging device, and if it is not unstowed back to the big rectangle, it will hurt you on opening. It'll be a very hard opening. So okay, now we're ready to continue packing. I'm going to put the slider up on my shoulder just to get it out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. As I said earlier, this parachute has a black end cell, a black center cell, and a black end cell on the other side. So we know right now that the parachute is hanging over my shoulder. The nose is closest to my body, and the tail is down in front of me, down here. If we took the whole parachute, lifted it up, and inflated it, we'd be flying straight ahead to give you the orientation of it. First, going to turn the parachute 90 degrees, which will then take the nose that was against my body out to one side. I'm going to find both sides of the parachute, and I'm going to be able to determine that because the stabilizers, the sides of your parachute, have a label on each side. And we know that our end cells are black. So here's one side of the parachute, and here's the other side of the parachute with the opposite label. We're going to count all 9 cells of the nose and lay them back on your hip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Push the air out. With one hand, take a hold of all 9 cells. And you can take this and just bring your arm in and out to help straighten out the inside. Give the parachute a shake and put the nose between your legs and hold it there for the rest of the pack job till we're ready to take it out and roll it. Now you're going to turn the parachute back 90 degrees so that you can separate it up the center cell and put half of the parachute on one side and half on the other. We know that our center cell is black, so we're looking for the black in the middle. You can also tell the center cell on parachutes by the warning label. It's either right in the center as this one is, or it's off to one side, but it's on the center cell. So since we know that this is our center line, we're going to follow that all the way from the tail, following the black and the center line, all the way to the nose, which we know is right here between our legs. Now we have half of the parachute on one side and half on the other, meaning we have steering lines and A, B, C, and D lines on one half, steering lines and A, B, C, and D lines on the other. We're going to continue now by starting with one side. It doesn't matter which side. And you always start by going to something that you know. And we know where the nose is. So we're going to start with this outer edge. The first line you come to, if you follow the outer edge, is your A stabilizer line. You continue to follow the outer edge and it'll take you to the B stabilizer line. Continue along to the C and to the D. So there's 4 stabilizers, and all we're doing is going from the nose, the front of the canopy, towards the back of the canopy, towards the tail, along the side of the parachute. So now we're at the back of the parachute, but on the side, and this long loopy area right here is going around the back corner. So the first line we should come to that is attached to this same outer edge around the corner is your steering line, and there's going to be 4 steering lines. So 1, follow your edge, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I have my 4 stabilizers and my 4 steering lines pulled out of the way, leaving here in my right hand the A, B, C, and D lines, which are attached to the underneath side of the parachute. We're going to start flaking the material in between each line group by leaving your A lines, the ones closest to your body, laying against your body. And you're going to pick up everything in front of your A lines. You're going to pull the B, C, and D lines forward. Count the material from this A line to this B line. Pull it out to the side. 1, 2, 3, 4. On a 9-cell parachute, there's going to be 4 pieces of material. If you were to pack a 7-cell, there would be 3. You're going to lay everything down. Now you know where your A lines are, and you know where your B lines are because your A's are connected to your B's. You're going to pick everything up in front of your B lines, stretch it out. You're going to count the material between each B and C line. B to C, B to C, B to C, B to C. Lay everything down. Material always goes to the outside and the lines to the center. You want them to all line up just like you're seeing happening here. Now you're going to pick up your D lines. That's the only ones left that you haven't touched. Pull those up, and sometimes they're a little hard to reach, so you need to get a low grip and pull them up to you. And again, you're going to count the material. C to D, C to D, C to D, and C to D. Lay it down, and you can see the snake-like effect that you get with all the line groups coming down the middle. Now we're going to go to the other side. We're going to start again at the nose so that we know where we're starting from. The nose is down between your legs, and you're going to follow that outer edge. The first line you come to again is an A stabilizer line going up the opposite side of the parachute towards the tail. Follow the outer edge, and there's the B. Follow the edge to the C. Follow the edge to the D stabilizer. We have all 4 stabilizers. We're going to follow the long loopy area, which is going around the back corner of the parachute around to where the first steering line attaches. Follow that edge to find all 4 steering lines. And again, we've got our stabilizers and our steering lines pulled out of the way, leaving us with A, B, C, and D lines, which are connected to the underside of the parachute. And by the way, those are called suspension lines. We're going to start again by leaving our A lines, the ones closest to our body. Leave those lay. You don't ever have to pull those out. Pick everything up in front of your A's and count the material, pulling the material to the outside, lines to the center. And you only need to move the material enough to make sure that you know where it's at, so that you don't pull your lines away from the center. Pick up everything in front of your B lines and count your material. Each B line connects to a C line. Lay that down. And now we've got our A, B, and C lines in place. We pick up our 4 D lines. Count the material between each C and each D line and lay those down. Okay, so now we have 8 D lines in the center, 8 C lines, 8 B lines, and 8 A lines. And I want to show you that sometimes the lines aren't as easy to find as I just showed you. And if you have a missing line, maybe you can only find 3 of your D lines. The way that you find a line is go back to what you already know. If you had 4 C lines, you know that each C line connects to a D line. So you're going to follow the material and see which one is missing. This C line is connected to that D line. This C line is connected to this D line. This C line is connected to this one. This C line does not have a D line, so if you follow the material, it will pull out the line for you. You've got all 4 D lines, you can lay them down, and now you know where everything is. It is extremely important that you have all of your D lines, all of your C lines, and your steering lines in the center. That's how you prevent a line over malfunction. So now that we have all of our lines in the center, we're going to bring our steering lines around and lay them on top of the D lines. So we find our outer edge, which goes down to the tail, and these lines are your steering lines. We're going to pull those over and lay them on top. You do that on both sides. You want to clear your stabilizers next. You know your stabilizers are the ones that are up high, the first things that we pulled out of the way. Follow that outer edge, and by clearing them, I mean that you pull the material out and your lines are to the center. This is not a clear stabilizer because the lines are outside and the material is in. To fix it, all we do is pull the material to the outside. You do that on both sides. You just follow your outer edge to go from stabilizer to stabilizer. Okay, so all of our lines are clear, and next we need to pull our slider down. We're going to quarter the slider. We just pull it down as far as it will go. It helps give you a softer opening, making sure that the slider stays all the way pulled down to the slider stops at the stabilizers. You're going to put a quarter of the material for the slider in between each of the line groups. So you're going to pick up a line group and pull part of the slider this way. Pull part of the slider out between the other line groups. Press the center down. You've got some of the slider coming towards the tail, and you've got some of the slider coming back towards the nose. You want to make sure at this point that you adjust so that your slider grommets are even, so that when the parachute comes out of the bag, it doesn't induce a line twist. Okay, our slider is placed. We are ready to bring the tail up and wrap it around the grommets. We're going to do that without disturbing any of our nice, neat work in the center. How you do that is by following the outer edge, and we already know that the steering lines are attached to the outer edge. So if we find the steering line, the inside is the closest one to the center of the tail, follow the outer edge, we can simply just pull the tail up to us without disturbing anything. This is when you want to really start thinking about the fact that your lines are in the center and you want to keep them there. I'm going to gently pull the tail up, wrap it around the grommets so that my center line is in the center. Take a good grip on the grommets, and now you can pick the whole parachute up and let the nose come out. The next step is to roll the nose. You want to make sure that you have all 9 of the cells. You're going to take it in one hand and roll it like a cigarette roll tightly on your hip. The more you roll it, the slower your opening will be. Now we're going to bring the tail around to the back of the parachute, in front of the nose I should say, so that we can cocoon it. And you want to do this gently because again you don't want to pull the lines that are in the center now around the outside towards the nose. So you're going to gently pull the tail. You can even use a knee to help hold things in place. You're going to do the same thing on the other side, helping to keep all of your steering lines and everything in the center. And we've got the 2 pieces of the tail together. We're going to roll those up into a little cocoon, and we're ready to lay the parachute down. Now when you lay the parachute down, you want to gently walk forward, keeping your lines taut, and place the parachute on the ground. Because again, once you lay the parachute down, or as you're laying it down, you want to do the least amount of damage on the inside as far as keeping the lines towards the center. So I'm going to take a step forward and support the top of the parachute with one hand. I'm going to gently lay the parachute on the ground, trying to keep it as neat as I possibly can. Okay, we need to cock our pilot chute before we start getting the air out of the parachute, because it has to be cocked before you try to put the parachute into the bag. How you're going to do that is by picking up the pilot chute, holding onto the hacky, straighten your bag out, and make sure that your lines are not twisted. The kill line, which is white, which goes all the way up through the bridle and into the pilot chute, and then this is just a keeper. It's a guide, so for length. You're going to put the bag close to the parachute, extend the bridle all the way up, and then pull the hacky, and that will allow the white kill line to go up through the bridle into the pilot chute. So the excess is now inside the pilot chute, allowing it to catch air and do its job. And there you have the keeper line, but the kill line is not exposed anymore. You can tell that your pilot chute is completely cocked a couple of ways. One is by looking for the blue line in the window. If that were white, the pilot chute is not ready for use. And also, inside the pilot chute, the kill line is now as long as the ribbons that connect the hacky to the top of the bridle. When the pilot chute is not set, the kill line is very short. If your pilot chute is not cocked and you jump, the pilot chute will not inflate, and it most likely will not pull your pin, and you would have a pilot chute and tow malfunction. So it's a very important part. Okay, now you're ready to start getting the air out of the parachute so we can put it in the bag. This is an opportunity to also check and make sure your slider is still pushed up all the way on the lines as far as they'll go. And you want to keep the slider in place by putting your knees on the grommets of the slider. The center line of your center cell is going up the middle, and you want to keep it there. And you want to think the entire time that you're getting the air out of the canopy that your lines are still in the center, and you want to keep them there as much as possible. So you're going to push air up, and you're going to roll the sides under. Without pushing the lines apart, you're going to sort of fold the sides under and then continue to push air up. Once you get it partially deflated, you're going to end up using your whole body by laying down onto the parachute. Squeeze all the air out. And try to get the parachute to be about as narrow as the bag that you're going to be putting it in. Now, zero porosity material likes to reinflate whenever you take your weight off of it. So you really need to use your whole body. And when you make the transition from being on top of the parachute to being on the side of it to start the fold, you have to do that quickly. We've got the air out of our parachute, and we're going to get our bag ready. So we're going to get it laying down with the grommets closest to you. And this bag had a broken rubber band on it, so we're going to replace this rubber band. I took off the old one, and all you do with the new one is put it through the little rubber band keeper, put the rubber band through itself once, and pull it tight. Rubber bands break very regularly. You probably are going to get 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes more, pack jobs or openings out of a rubber band. So it's a good idea to keep rubber bands close to you in your pocket or something while you're packing so that you can switch them out when you're laying on top of your parachute if you didn't do it before. Okay, so we're ready to put it in the bag. The transition from being on top of the parachute to the side has got to be a quick one, because as soon as you take your weight off of the parachute, it's going to start reinflating with air, and that will make it harder to get in the bag. I take a one-handed grip at the top with my left hand, and I'm going to come to the side of the parachute. I'm going to put my knee up on the left, with my left knee at the top, my right hand down at the grommets, and my left hand a third of the way up at the parachute. That's usually just above the warning label. I'm going to lift the parachute, and it will make a crease right where my hand is. Fold it back, and fold it forward again back onto itself, creating an S fold, so that your lines end up at the edge of the parachute here, preventing line burn as the parachute deploys and comes out of the bag during the opening. I'm going to put my knee on top of the parachute, again using all of your weight so that it's not reinflating. Take my left knee off, get a one-handed grip, and all I have to do is lift the parachute up, and it will create a fold right here where the first fold is laying on top. So I'm going to lift it up, fold it all the way forward, and then back onto itself, creating a little brick that we will then put in the bag. Keep your weight on the parachute to control it so that it doesn't start reinflating and squishing out. And you want to try to push straight down on it versus one way or another so it doesn't slip to one side. Keep the air out of it. Pick up one whole side with your hand. Pull your bag underneath the parachute and try to fill one corner as best as you can. Keep your weight on it. Pick up the entire other side and push that into the bag. You're going to reach underneath the bag and pull the grommets towards the lines, and your bag is completely covering the parachute at this point. And we're ready to start stowing the lines. One thing that you definitely do want to do at this point, now that you've gotten the parachute in the bag, is it's another chance to check your pilot chute, make sure that it's still cocked, because sometimes, especially with brand new pilot chutes, the line will have a tendency to slide a little bit as you're moving the bag around. So you can always stand back up and recock the pilot chute just to be sure that it's complete. So now we're ready to stow the lines. We're going to start by keeping our weight on top of the bag again. This bag has 2 grommets that we're going to use. Some bags have 4, some have 3. Regardless of the number, you start with the inside grommets. Doesn't matter which side you start with. I usually start with the right side. I'm going to pull the rubber band, stretch it down to the grommet, put it through the grommet, put your hand into the rubber band, and then you're going to make a line stow. You bring the bag forward and pull a line stow through the rubber band. You want the line stow to be at least 2 inches, 2.5, maybe 3 inches long. You're going to go to the other side, do the same thing with this grommet. When you're doing your next stow, you want to be careful not to pull out your first one. So move your bag forward and pull your stow in. And you want to make your stows equal in length. And if you need these rubber bands to be a little bit tighter around the lines, you can pull the rubber band back a little bit to tighten the stow. It's always important to have your rubber bands a little bit too tight than a little bit too loose. You want to avoid having what they call line dump. which is an out-of-sequence deployment where your lines come unstowed before you have complete line stretch. And what happens is then you have a very hard shock because the lines stretch very quickly, and the force of that can break a riser, it can break you. So very important to make sure you have tight line stows and that they're long enough. Once you do the grommets, you can sit the bag up. You're ready to stow the rest of the lines going back and forth across the top of the bag. Any of the stows that you do from here forward that are not through a grommet, you want to double stow, meaning that you double wrap the rubber band around the lines. And again, you're going to walk the bag forward, make a stow, pull the rubber band up and over the lines, twist it and take it around it again. So now it's through twice. You've got a nice length of the stow, and it's nice and tight because you've doubled the rubber band around it. And you're just going to continue that process all the way down the lines, leaving 12 to 18 inches of line left at the container. Leaving that length from the top of the riser to your last stow on the bag allows the bag to come off your back in a straight line, preventing line twists. You may end up having some rubber bands left over on the bag, and that's okay. You don't have to use all the rubber bands. So we've got enough line left, 12 to 18 inches. The stows on our bag are nice and neat. You can see the deployment sequence and that they'll come off in an orderly fashion. And we're ready to put the bag into the container and close the container. So I'm going to walk the bag towards the container, and I'm going to sit the bag into the main container with the lines facing down. I'm going to pick it up, walk it forward without twisting or turning it. And I'm going to sit the bag into the container with the lines facing down. We're going to get our pilot chute out of the way, and the next step is to stow the risers. You're going to do that by starting at your 3-ring up here and laying the risers down the side of the container with the toggle facing the reserve container. You're going to lay those in nice and neat, making it taut going over the shoulder. And you can close the shoulder flap here, keeping that in place. Start on the other side at the 3-ring, laying it in there nice and flat, the toggle facing the reserve container. And you can close the shoulder flap. Now we have the excess line that we talked about that we didn't make a stow with, and what we need to do with that is lay it in the bottom of the container like there would be a rubber band stow, but there's not. And you want to do that gently, making the lines go straight down towards the bottom of the container and not necessarily wrapping around the bottom of the reserve container. So lay those in at the bottom. You're going to have the lines facing down with the bag in, and now you're going to roll the bag so that the lines end up at the very bottom of the container. You're taking the grommet towards the top of the container. You're going to roll that in and just work the bag into the corners of the container. And we're ready to start closing the container. When you pack a parachute, you want to check your closing loop and make sure that it's in good condition. If it's frayed, you want to replace it. They're very easy to replace. All you have to do is ask an instructor or a rigger to help you with it the first time, and after that it should be pretty simple. You need a closing or a pull-up cord. You put that through your closing loop. And this container, most of the containers close starting with the bottom flap, the top flap, the right, and then the left. On our rigs numbers 12, 13, and 14 have the closing loop attached to the bottom flap, so that's where you start, and then you go up and close the top flap. On all of our other rigs numbers 1 through 10, including the big boy rig, the actual closing loop is placed inside the main container, and you then start by putting it through the grommet on the bottom flap and go to the top flap second. So we've got a good closing loop, got our pull-up cord, and we're going to go to the top flap. You can get your weight on top of the parachute again, getting some of the air out, and then you're going to pull till the closing loop comes through the grommet. You can place your knee right on top of the grommet to hold it in place. You can push the lines down on the sides so they're nice and neat. And this is the time that you want to prepare your bridle so that it is going the correct direction, it's the correct length once you have your flaps closed. You want to put the pin on the left side of the top flap there. That leaves just about enough length so that when you're ready to close it, you fold that down and the pin will go in properly. If you have some excess bridle, you can just tuck that under there, making it nice and neat. I'm going to go to the right side flap, put the pull-up cord through, keeping your weight on it, using all of your body for leverage. Pull that right up through so that your closing loop is through the grommet. Put your knee on the grommet. Get ready to do the last flap, the left side. Go ahead and put the pull-up cord through. And pull it up. Get the closing loop up through the grommet and put your pin in. If you can pull much more than that much of the closing loop through, your pack job is probably not tight enough. It should not be easy to pull your closing loop up through your grommets. If it is too long, then we need to shorten your closing loop, and all you have to do is find an instructor or a rigger and they can help you with that. Once you do it once, you'll never forget how to do it. It's a really easy fix, and it's really important to prevent premature openings. So we're going to have the pin facing up, and that's important so that it cannot easily get pushed out if you sit down on something. And you want to orient the bridle so that it is going to cover the pin and give it a little extra protection. You can also check again to see that your pilot chute is still cocked by checking the window and seeing that the kill line is colored. If it's white, then it's not a safe pack job. You have to open it back up and make sure your pilot chute is cocked. You're going to take out your pull-up cord by pulling it underneath the pin. That way when you continue to pull it out, the friction is going against the pin and not against your closing loop, which then decreases the fray and makes your closing loop last a little bit longer. If you're ever in doubt about your closing loop, if you even have to question whether or not you should change it, change it. They're only pennies, and having a good maintained rig prevents accidents. You want to take your bridle and take a good maybe 4 or 5 inches of it and push it up underneath the flap down towards your pocket that you're going to put your pilot chute in. And the reason for that is if your bridle were to get caught on something, it would pull that excess line out before it would pull your pin. So again, it's just a little preventative measure from a premature opening. You can close your flap, and now we're ready to fold the pilot chute. Okay, let's continue by folding and stowing the pilot chute. First thing you want to do is take 5 or 6 inches of your bridle and stow it up underneath the right side flap. The purpose for this is to help again prevent your pin from getting pulled prematurely. If your bridle were to get caught on something and it got pulled, it would be able to pull out that amount of bridle before it would start pulling on your pin. So you want to do that first, stow that up in there, get it nice and flat, the bridle's nice and flat against the bottom of your container, and we're ready to fold the pilot chute. Now there's several different ways that you will see people fold pilot chutes. I'm going to show you the way I prefer. You're going to lay the pilot chute out flat with the bridle coming out one side. Fold the pilot chute in half. You're going to fold the pilot chute back in half so the bridle is back towards the hacky, and lay the bridle down flat. Fold in one side of the pilot chute and start rolling it up nice and neat. You're going to roll it halfway in just to the hacky. Hold it. Fold in the other side of the pilot chute and roll that up. And the goal is to have all of the mesh covered. Have a nice, neat little cigarette roll that you're going to put in your pouch. Once you have the two sides rolled up, you're going to pick it up and you've got your bridle to stow. You're going to fold this back and forth in your hand all the way up to the base of the container. You can put that between your two rolls. Hold that in there nice and neat, and now you've got a nice, smooth, even fold of your pilot chute. And when you pull this out, it's going to come out nice and smooth. The reason that I like to have the bridle stowed on the outside of the pilot chute is that if this gets pulled, it's going to come out and it's not going to bunch up your pilot chute such that you might not be able to get it out of the pouch. So once you have it folded neatly, you're going to put it into the pouch. You end up with your bridle flat against the container, and your hacky is on the opposite side, away from the bridle, so there's less chance of you catching the bridle as you're going to find the hacky to pull. Make it nice and even. You can close your main container flap. Your parachute is packed and ready to jump. As always, you want to give your gear a complete check before you put it on to jump every single time. And if you're not a licensed jumper, make sure that you have an instructor, an AFF jump master or a static line jump master give you a gear check prior to you getting on the airplane. It's probably one of the most important things you can do for yourself once you're off of AFF. It's a good idea to make yourself a picture of this, draw yourself a picture of this so that you can keep it in front of you while you're learning to pack. That way you can refer back to the picture and make sure and learn all the parts of the parachute as it's hanging over your shoulder. In any pack job, it's imperative that you do it right. So if you're not sure about anything, find someone and ask them. Anyone in the packing room, a rigger, an instructor can give you direction. And if there's nobody there to ask, lay the parachute down and wait till you can get some help. Blue skies. So now we have our steering lines and our stabilizers pulled out of the way, leaving us in my right hand A, B, C, and D lines. Okay, I take one hand and I hold the...
Oh, my radio died. Okay.
Put your hand through the rubber band.
Shut.
You're going to pick up everything in front of your A lines. And again, you're going to count the material between the A's and the B's. You want to gently pull the tail up, wrap it around the grommets, take a hold of the grommets.
We're gonna cut.
So that's it.
All right. Happy packing.
Happy packing. 1-800-SKYDIVE. 1-800